All right, guys, I want to take a look at oil with all the stuff going on right now. I know if you've watched some of the other videos I had posted prior to this, I was talking about oil getting up to this red line. I didn't think it'd get there this quick, but of course, there wasn't a war going on at that time. So I said that I think oil is going to get to 135 bucks a barrel at least. That would be the place that it would go. But what I was really pointing at was XLE, which is a bunch of different gasoline companies, was likely to get up to that 135 range, but over a longer period of time. Now we can see oil is just absolutely ripping. I expect XLE to continue trading up, but remember, these are companies with earnings. So oil being a commodity, these being future prices, they're way ahead of the market betting on what they think the future price is going to be. So all the people buying here believe it's going to be much more in the future, which I do believe that's going to be the case. But, more realistically, it would have been something like this due to inflation. And then remember, this is based on the US dollar. So keep that in mind with all of this. But I don't know. This is a wartime, right? So this could come crashing back down to these levels. It could just absolutely moon. We'll see what happens here. But in the United States, the one thing I'm concerned with is I'm hearing politicians come out talking about these companies here and XLE, like your gas companies like Chevron and Shell and ConocoPhillips and whatever, right? They're saying that people are they're price gouging citizens. That is absolute garbage. Don't buy into that garbage. This is exactly what governments say when they print too much money. There's all this inflation going on and prices are going up. If this was truly price gouging from an oil company, then why is bread higher? Why are used cars higher? Why are new cars higher? Why is rent up 25%? I mean, it's ridiculous. Don't listen to that garbage. Unfortunately, that's what governments do. They never blame themselves for leaving on the money spigot too long. So unfortunately, they're going to probably use these for price controls. If they don't, so here's what to keep in mind: if this continues to climb, which I believe it's going to probably get there really quick now, it's possible we see, depending on how old you are. I remember back in 2008, we got those $300 checks in the mail from the government. Obviously, that's become much easier to do. So it's possible, instead of price controls, in the short term, we end up seeing paychecks. That's their form of inflation again, right? You have these are politicians, right? There's elections coming up again. So they're going to use this as a way to relieve pressure, but also buy votes at the same time. So that's a possibility. We may see checks coming in the mail for that. But what we have to watch for with these companies, like you can see a gap. Generally, let's say like this: there would be a little bit of a gap between here, kind of like you see back here. Um, but this is widening quickly, right? Now, I don't think XLE is going to jump like oil did, because these companies have to produce earnings and they have costs and all of this stuff. Oil could go up here and then drop right back down to here. So I think it's more likely that you see oil make these moves, but this might start to turn up quicker than following a nice steady trend here. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. I'm not exactly sure, of course. I don't think anybody's exactly sure, but I think we can be more sure that the government is not going to stop printing money, especially looking at the potential of World War III right now. So we'll have to see what happens with Russia and Ukraine, and if NATO gets involved, that might just change and turn this into a whole war in Europe. And then all bets are off. Stocks could absolutely just get murdered. Gold, oil, agriculture, industrial stocks, like that's where I would be fleeing a lot of my money to. Although I think crypto will still do well in certain areas. But let's take a look at gold actually right now. You can see the old wedge pattern I had here, saying that sometime by May this is going to break up or break down, but the odds were it was going to break up. And looking at the cup and handle shape we have here, right? Traditional bullish, bullish indicator here. I mean, that's great. But of course, we're looking at long term. I think gold is going to have a swing of something like this. It's going to climb for many, many, many years into the future due to governments printing so much money. Um, Looking at this, if you're a short-term trader, I don't know what to tell you here. You can trade it, do whatever you want. It's possible we see gold bounce around here and have some sell-offs. We are above our 2011 high, looks like, which is really old news. We're really looking for this to be a point of resistance. But if this becomes a new support level, that would be interesting. That means it would be coiling. Well, it was coiling up here. I mean, it would have some stability to continue on a rise. So I think gold is just a long-term play. Another play for this that I personally use is Paxos Gold. In the crypto world, I think you get it on Coinbase too, I think, but I put that in my Celsius wallet and I get 5%, I think right around now, 4.5% to 5% interest, or yield, I guess is what they're calling it. They can't guarantee anything, but 5% yield right now on average. And it's real gold, right? It's physically backed coins. You could go look up Paxos Gold and check out how they do it. Kind of nice. I think this is a great play. I wouldn't be playing around in paper gold much right now. I'd want the physical stuff in a crazy time like this. You don't know what's going to happen. Looking at the bond market, with gold, there's obviously there's great support in this area for bonds. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen. Is there going to be a dollar crisis? Right? We've already been building to that way before we ever, saw this or had this war come in. So let me get rid of XLE here. But I think I would feel more safe holding something like gold. I do think that we will continue to see a sharp rise in treasuries, even though the interest rate is ridiculously low and we have inflation. Companies are looking for tier one assets. They have to use something like that, which is gold and bonds. So we could see a lot of companies jump into bonds, which means you're probably having a massive sell-off in the stock market. If that's happening, it just depends on what goes down with Russia. Do we end up in this war here in the United States? We're in every war, so we are incredibly likely to end up in a war. So I do expect treasuries to rise, but I wouldn't want to hold them after seeing what's happening here with Russia, for example. These types of sanctions, they can't liquidate their U.S. treasuries into the market, right? And there's nothing saying that the government wouldn't do that. Now you might say, "Oh well, but I'm not, Putin, or I'm not, the Russian military. Why would my government do that to me?" Well, if we go into a war, they may not want you to liquidate bonds, period. So if you can't sell that, you're not getting your money out to go buy a house or, whatever else you're trying to buy at the time. So I don't really trust it. I wouldn't want to hold on to it. I'd rather have gold at that point, right? Gold and silver. At least I could trade it for something or still sell it to somebody who has cash. I could trade it for a house, right? Whatever I want. If the market was that wild, right, and we were having real problems, I mean, gold's always been the place people end up going. So I'd want some of that. Paxos Gold keeps it really easy to transfer anywhere in the world, transfer ownership of that physical gold, right? It's audited by a third-party company. So that makes it really easy to transfer, right? So I don't necessarily have to be hunking around a gold bar or, 10-ounce bars or 1 ounce or half ounce or quarter ounce coins or anything, right? You can simply use Paxos Gold as a form of trade. So keep that in mind. But let's take a look here at something else I think is really important. So this turned out to be really good. Great trade. Actually, I'm not going to trade this one yet. I've been holding it, but RJA and RJI. So Jim Rogers, I would ask you guys to go look him up yourself. Just an incredible investor. Of course, I was buying in around this point here. I had owned it way back, well, back in time. I'd owned it pretty cheap. let's see, where was that? Yeah, around $4, I guess. I owned it back there too. Ended up selling out, and man, that was a great buy-in. But I think um, things like this are going to become very, very important. Typically, you would see this as a point of resistance, but I mean, if the whole world ends up in a war, food is going to matter, right? So RJA would be another place. This is the agriculture, his agricultural play. I think this is going to be something to continue holding for a long period of time. This was kind of my inflation play. Once we saw the real inflation numbers start to come in, it was clear that this was going to maintain its growth. Of course, I was buying it way earlier than this, but as soon as we saw the official numbers for inflation really start to reflect what it should be, that told me, well, this is going to be a great long-term hold. So we'll see what happens with this over the long term. Let me take a look at my notes here. Um, yeah, so get ready. I don't know what to expect. I know the ruble, I don't have their chart up here. The ruble's gotten smashed. The Russian ruble, if you don't know what that is, that's just their currency there. But there's a lot of information that's kind of false that you're hearing out on Fox and CNN just about the banking system and how it operates. I would recommend people go look up others like Jeff Snyder. And I mean, these guys are very brilliant on how the banking system works, where you're hearing about Russia getting kicked off of SWIFT, and it doesn't really work that way. So it think of it like political gymnastics. They're saying a lot of stuff, but it may not affect them like everybody thinks. So anyway, that'll be the end of this video. Looks like it's already 12 minutes in. I hope that's helpful. Talking about gold and oil and these types of commodities, I think they're going to be a great play over the long term, especially. Don't get too caught up in the short term. But there may be some short term plays you need to look into. Maybe real quick before I go, we'll pull up the S&P 500. Let's see here real quick. Now, a lot of these stocks within the S&P 500 are already 50% or down 50% from their highs. Now, I know it doesn't look that way from here, but remember, and some of my other videos I talked about, um, this is weighted, right? This is an index, so it's weighted. Apple has, I believe, it's like a 6% weighting or so. So a lot of the bigger stocks can make this look like it's climbing when everything's really falling. So everything, not everything, but you get what I mean. A lot of these within here they look like this right now, right? They were falling long before we ever got here. So that was showing that there's weakness forming, and these, bigger players were holding this up higher. I mean, you could probably look back at about, I don't know, kind of in this zone here, it started to lose strength back here, but a lot of these were falling way before. So there's some good deals out there, I think, right now. But with a war, again, all bets are off. But even without the war, you may have seen those stocks fall another 10 or 15%. But who cares at that point? If you're getting a really good deal, you continue to buy those on the way down. But unfortunately, we could see panic, right? Where if the S&P sells off, those stocks could really sell off hard too, but I don't think they would sell off as hard as the larger stocks because there's just a bigger gap between those. But anyway, we can see we're still sitting at this, a little bit of support here. So we have to see, this is a weekly chart too, by the way. So a couple of weeks could pass. We just need to see what happens. But what I would say for people who want to hold these stocks is, this trend line that's forming right there between this point, and this point, to me, that says this is not good for the broader market. So I wouldn't be playing around much in these right now. I would be out in other areas. I would be in cash short term. That's another scary thing to say. I mean, cash during this time may not be good, right? You might not want to hold your money in banks. But anyway, this video ends at 15, so I got to go. Make sure you like, comment, argue with each other, whatever you want. Have a good one.